Bonjour! Hi! This is a recorded version of a live session from Twitch. It will be a very long video, and that's why I put timestamp in the description so you could skip and go directly to the part that interests you. If you want to know exactly when I'm streaming, go visit twitch.tv/fboucheros. But for now, let's watch this session. Okay, so welcome, and now I don't see you on my on my screen, so I won't look at you when I'm speaking to you. So how are you? Welcome to the stream, Ted. I'm Frank. We only chit chat. We never.
Yep. Wait, I just lost your sound.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Well, I was hearing some kind of I don't know, Land Rover or something like that.
Yeah, they got the gardeners, so.
Well, lucky you. Like here, it's snow. We had half a feet of snow yesterday and the day before, so it's white everywhere.
Wow.
But good. It's kind of expected. Way better than at Christmas. I was far in the east, and usually there's a lot of snow where I was for Christmas, and it was green. Not green, but not white.
Not white, yeah.
So it's sad. So anyway, so welcome to the stream. I started earlier today, so as I'm supposed to be streaming for in my time zone at I usually start at 9. So I did stream to had some unit test, and I start doing some refactoring, very light refactoring.
Okay.
We'll just put, and then I did really stupid unit tests right now, so don't beat me too strong on that thing. I was, I said, let's put just few unit tests. So what I did, so I can show you the project. I'm assuming you never run it, so I can do that.
I looked at the code a bit, but I have not run it.
So you know what? I never run it. I think from Visual Studio.
Oh, why not?
Well, I'm usually using Visual Studio Code.
Oh, okay.
Because when I start working on that, I was on Linux, and I want to go back to Linux, but right now the tool I was using, I cannot use it anymore to run in my VMs, so I'm just running in Windows. But since it's .NET Core, it's completely portable. It can run anywhere. And originally, this project was created by Kevin Griffin, and he did it. He did it on Visual Studio, the big one, IDE. So like everything is compatible, but I never did run it. So let's try to see if it's work. Oh, I was in the test. No, okay. So one thing, I had a ASCII art at the beginning, but the file when it's running inside Visual Studio or Visual Studio IDE is not the same location like the starting point. So that was failing earlier today, and I just commented temporarily to move forward. So like we're missing here the beautiful ASCII art. It's ugly, but anyway. So right now the project, you start a new game from a flat file, and that's on purpose kind of thing. So you start from a flat file, so the community could create new file, new maps, and we can have multiple starting point if we want. The save go to a MongoDB. Right now the Mongo, because I didn't have a Mongo installed on my machine, it's running in the Docker container. But I didn't start Docker today. I like for the restructure and everything, like I don't think we needed that. So save some memory and CPU for me on my side, so I could run more smoothly. So if I do the start or option 1, then it asks me how I can call you. That was my opening to be very gender open, whatever. So you could type princess, captain, whatever you want, your name if you want. So I will type Frank, and I didn't comment apparently here, so we're failing. We'll need to... Can I just jump over? No. I thought I commented. Yeah, and the string is hard-coded. I also need to start using settings, but settings in a console application, it's kind of different. You need to implement it. It's not like in the on the web project, and I'm more used to do builder. Oh, it was a data file. Okay, you know what? Let's close this. And let's close this. And run it from here. Definitely need to do some... so now I'm in Visual Studio Code. I need to do more validation apparently because there's few little thing. Yeah, so the settings don't work very well in the that doesn't work. Like by default, when you do a ASP.NET MVC, the web project, everything is kind of there for you. But in a console application, you need to do it a little bit more. And I was not sure, and I needed to do services and stuff. And that's why I thought, you know what, I should have some kind of structure, because right now all the files are in one folder. So like, you know, I want to add some services, dependency injection. And that's why I reached out to the live coder. So let's start again. Let's try this. And I still, because I changed all the... Yeah, it's true. I didn't change that. So I need to add a project over. And you know what I forgot also to do? I should introduce yourself a little bit more. So you wanna introduce yourself? You're live.
Well,
you're another part of the. You're another live coder, right?
Yep.
So what do you do?
Yeah. So I'm a Java trainer and coach, and so and I've actually been streaming coming up on a year, and so. But what I do is basically go into companies and helping teams and individuals be better coders, both with training and teaching folks how to do unit testing and test-driven development and architecture and organizing code. So sort of go in sometimes with pre-planned stuff, and sometimes go in and just start attacking the code and start figuring things out, and when you asked for I forget how it came up. You were asking for help, or something was in one of the live coders chats. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. I go into to code and help folks add tests. In fact, that's something I do on one of my one of the days of the week, because I stream pretty much almost every day other than this holiday break. One of the things I do is take code that is kind of very procedural, very linear, and without tests, and I go in and just start adding tests. And so when you ask for help, it's like, oh, I can help with that, because that's kind of what I do.
That's exactly what I do. Like, well, cool. I'm glad you joined. Yeah, and for me, like this project is to get back a little bit in code. And I'm a cloud advocate, so I do cloud stuff. But looking for 2 hours, a guy working in an ARM template, like it's just a big JSON file, it's kind of very boring. So I thought, we'll do projects that use the cloud at some point, or some services, and we'll just have fun. And at the same time, for me, it's it's better because now I get back in code and all the do PRs and a little bit more of that thing. But I'm very rusted, And so that's why I reached out to the dev coder community, say, you know what, like, what's the best practices in .NET Core, because I'm just hacking through. I know C#, but you know, so that's why I was like, well, you know, I don't know today what's the best practice, so that's why I reached out. So I was super happy when you like right away say, yep, let's have some fun. Okay, so so now the code it's working now, and now like when I will be looking at on my second screen, now I'm looking at you. I flip the camera, so if I show my T-shirt, you will see because you have some text. But if I stay down, everything will look fine. So anyway, so right now, and that was it's Brady's house. Brady's is a PM in the Microsoft team for .NET, and he was watching the stream of Kevin when Kevin started. So Kevin worked on that project maybe for 2 hours or something like that, or maybe one, like just a little bit getting started. And it was just, you know, making fun of Brady. Brady was watching on the stream, so that's why it's Brady's house, and the description are a little bit silly. It was just to, you know, have some fun. So anyway, so you could type north, or of course you could be lazy and avoid any typo by just typing N. So now you go inside the house. If you go now, we see that we have 3 exits. I can make it a little bit bigger maybe. So now if I go south, so I get out of the house, now the description is not show anymore because I already saw that room, you know, big room. But so that's one feature we have. So if I get in and now I go east, so now in east there's a flashlight on the table, so I can take the flashlight, flashlight. So now I switch the inventory. I remove the flashlight from the inventory of the room, and I had the flashlight in my inventory. And it's not a bug, but it doesn't work right now as I plan. Is the inventory is player inventory, and I would like to have my name instead. So because I said I want the game to call me Frank, I would like to have Frank's inventory. But you know, that's it's not working as expected, but it's not, you know, breaking anything now, so I'm keeping it that way. So another thing that I had was if you type X, like you type inventory, of course it will list inventory. It will list your inventory, and if you type status, I need to type correctly. Now, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, X, forgot how to, I think it was summary, yeah. So summary, it lists all the key event. There's some key event because eventually in that game I want to add some AI, because right now the game you're supposed to be blind and wearing some special goggles or, you know, glasses that are talking to you and stuff like that, and I want to inject some kind of personality on those glasses. So I want to add some AI, and when you start a game, the game will tell you a summary of what you did. So for that I needed some kind of key event. So while you're doing some action or, you know, progressing, you have key action triggered, and like, you know, the AI will play with that to make a summary. So right now there's only one, and when you take the flashlight you trigger that one. So found the flashlight. I did a map coverage. It's not a game coverage, it's a map coverage. So we saw 75% of the map, and we are in the living room. So if we save, all that information will be saved in a big flat file, a JSON file, and that's it. And that, in fact, that's what I did. Save that in data, the room.json. That's my save game, and then I put it there so people could, you know, start from there and make their own map if they want. So yeah, so that's the project. So now what I did this morning is at the beginning, if you check the code, the version you had, everything was at the root.
Right.
So now I created src folder. I move all the code there. So what's left there, it's GitHub stuff and GitHub stuff kind of are still at the root. Then we go in source. I still have the solution at that root level, if I can say, and I create subfolder for the project itself, and I create a new project for the unit test, and now I have unit test, like very silly unit test, but I have the unit test.
Hey.
So
all right, cool.
Yeah, so that's what I have.
So why don't we look at the tests that you've got and see I know they're silly, but any tests are good tests.
Okay, I'm using XUnit.
Okay.
And right now I did only two. I didn't try it inside Visual Studio Code. I installed an extension this morning, so I should be able to run unit tests directly from here. So we'll have some fun. So I did the command parser, and I was reading. I told you I was very rusty, so I had unit tests, XUnit not far, and also this, and I was using that as a template for naming kind of convention. I'm assuming there's not convention, but they're names that people use a lot. Like obviously you could name it the way you want, but so I was trying to use the same
convention.
Yeah. So I said, okay, command parser should, and then command parser is just you type something and it return a command. So I did enter a bunch of command, and that's what I did. So that's one, and the one that make a little bit more sense, but it's not very well done yet because I was just trying to have more and more, is because every time, like, it's always the same thing, like, is parser input unknown character, return unknown, if input exit, return endl. But takes is a little bit more smart as an action because it's a two-part action.
Right.
So if you don't specify anything, you just say take, then like it shouldn't work. So that's why I have endl. And if you're using with a parameter, it should return the command take. But right now, it just return the command take. I don't validate like what happened when this, so that's why I jump in inventory, and I was just getting started when you pinged me.
Right.
So in inventory, by default, there's an inventory and it's named room items, and there's a list of item that is empty, but it's initialized. And I was like, okay, if I add one, and that's where I was when you pinged me. So I would say, if I had an item, I should grow the list, I should retrieve that item and stuff like that. So I will have to make more smart unit tests. I understand that. But even that, at one point, like back in the day when I was doing unit tests in MVC and stuff, like I was doing dependency injection with interface in my code, so I could validate that I pass, and I could mock thing, and it was smarter. But now I know that in my code I'm missing some stuff there. And still in web, in .NET Core web, there's already a ton of stuff that is present. In console application, a lot of, like, of course it can work because it's still .NET Core, but things are not in place. So I did some research. I can share the URL. I really like Gunnar. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Gunnar. I follow this guy since very, very long time. Put it in a chat of Twitch chat. And I was reading his article, and he implement using the framework. I forgot the framework name again. Where is the framework name? Autofac. So I was using Autofac to set up dependency injection. So it looks clean, but yeah.
So one of the things, dependency injection, or more specifically automatic dependency injection, is useful, but not necessary, right? I mean, we could do manual dependency injection, in other words, passing parameters to constructors, to basically, we don't have to jump directly to dependency injection container.
Okay.
Like one of the things you're probably going to want to inject, and this is something that I see a lot of, especially for console-based apps, is you've got console, write line and stuff like that, all over the place.
Yep.
And one of the things that can make, so usually what I see folks do is say, okay, well, I'll just sort of inject or override or replace the system console with one that I control. But still, that's not great. And one of the principles I have, and it's an architectural principle, but it also comes from making tests easier, is separating, putting a clear interface between sort of your core code and infrastructure, and the console I consider infrastructure. Basically, any I/O, you want to put a sharp, delineation, a sharp separation between the code and the infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think it will help me because in the future, if I would like to host the game in a web, then all that game that I have now that is a console application should be in fact a library, and then I will be using different UI, right? So yeah, that was also one of my concern, and I knew at one point I need refact, but that's the beauty of code. You just put it there and then you refact iteration. Mm-hmm. I was focusing on different tech when I was creating those things. It's the first time I create a text-based adventure game, so I have no experience on how I should do things, and I'm not using any framework of games. I know some of my friends are used to create games that are, hey, you should use this thing and this thing. So no, I want to do it everything.
Yeah.
I want to learn. I don't want to learn a framework. I just want to code.
Yeah, and so the architecture that I talk a lot about and use is called the hexagonal architecture, or sometimes ports and adapters. And so by separating, and so one of its features or main, guidelines is separating I/O from sort of the core logic, because it then does allow you to, I don't want to use console anymore. I want to use, a web front end. I don't want to use a web front end. I want to have it done by text messaging. Who knows, right?
Yeah, so put it in a chat or something. Yeah.
By having a clear separation, you make it very easy to do that, and so that's always the first thing I look at when I'm going through code is just separating out any I/O from sort of core logic, and that in turn makes it much easier to test, because then you're not sort of trying to work around and fake and mock the console. You're working sort of at a little bit of a higher level.
Cool, I like that. So where do we start?
So one of the more interesting ones would be there's probably functionality somewhere that has us move from room to room. So we could start there. We could continue down the road of the command parser, inventory stuff.
Well, the starting point is program.cs. That's kind of contain the main loop, and that's a little bit big. Yeah, okay, that's one. Is it big enough for you, or was it better before?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
That's fine?
That's still that's still fine. So the other thing, you're directly talking to a Mongo database, and because one of the other things, again, from an architectural standpoint, that's I/O. And so what I'd want to do is put an interface there so that I could talk to an in-memory database that maybe is just backed by some collection. And so that's something we could focus on as well.
Then I should start my Docker container, though, if we do that.
Well, the idea is you wouldn't have to, right? So we could look at so like, I mean, I'll leave it to you. So I think there are two directions we could go down. We could go down one place, which is sort of isolating how the code is talking to the database, that you actually don't need a database when you're just playing around. So you can have a mock database. That's one direction. The other direction is to start and just do some refactoring on this code and just start pulling stuff out into methods. So either way.
Well, like, the database right now is only used to save and load. After that, everything is in memory. There's no read in and that was my first experience with MongoDB. That's why it's hard-coded. That's why it's very direct. I knew I needed and I wanted kind of a services to abstract the database, but I didn't want to focus on that. I was saying, you know what, I will do it when I will refactor and restructure, architect my code. So that's why everything right now is just like a big list of classes. So I think, so we can start moving stuff around.
Yeah. So one of the things that I look at, so for example, in this this big switch statement, one of the things that is the first thing that I do is what I call tiny clarifications. So I basically take anything that are any of these blocks, right? So the command quit block or even the direction block, and basically pull that out into a method.
Okay.
So you're using Visual Studio. I don't know what refactoring capabilities it has, but these should be pretty straightforward refactorings. So when I say extract method, do you know what I mean, or should I explain more?
I think I know what you're saying. You know what? Let's close it, because I think for refactoring, I think we'll have better service if I'm using the big Visual Studio.
All right.
But then it's been a while.
Well, for the refactoring we're doing, we could do it manually. It's not.
Yeah, I know, but I know there's plenty of right click, do things. I know they had in the last version that this is Visual Studio 2019, I think, version 3 or something like that, or I forgot where. Help. Anyway, it's the last release, and I know they added a bunch of feature into that. And I know you can do things like that. So what you're saying is, if I do this, then I could just move it to a method or something like that.
Yeah, so there should be some kind of refactor extract method. So I don't know if you have a refactor. Let's see it.
Peak definition, go to implementation. I know there's a way to quickly refact.
I see the quick actions and refactorings up there. Second from the top.
Yeah, you're right. Extract method.
So
I'm not sure what it's doing. New method. Okay, but he took no.
Did it take too much?
Yeah, he took the full switch.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. We can start there. But yeah, we'd like to have it just
should I do this? Private. Okay, so I think this, yeah. So if I do this, and now I name it, what? Do quit?
Sure.
Does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it English? Do quit. And now where is do quit? Quit console, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Okay.
All right. So now, I mean, this one's a little odd because it just exits, and so we're probably not going to run tests on it. So we can sort of leave that one alone. But let's take a look at the rest of these. Let's look at like command take, because that one, there's code there that we should extract. So let's take that whole method.
And I'm extracting it.
Yep.
So extract the method, and now we'll do take. Excellent. And we are in do take right now. Here. So what I do is in my game session, that is some kind of my environment right now, I check the room manager and I grab the inventory of the current room, because I will be removing it from there. I take what was past the input string, and I split it because I'm expecting the word take, a space, and something. And right now a problem that I know that eventually will appear is, if it's a two word thing you want to take, then it will be a problem. But right now, like, I'm keeping it simple, so now it's just like take flashlight. So I'm expecting a space. I just validate that it's long enough, and then I return. I will do the action.
Right. So what we could do is we could pull out that input string split into its own method, which is extract item name, and then that way you've isolated. Since you mentioned that you want to be able to handle a multi-word item, you now have it in one place, and we could even start writing tests for fixing that.
Oh, okay, so if I elaborate that function in future, like that code will still be clean, and it's inside the function, so we'll be transparent for any developers looking at it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
So then it should be in inventory then? Where I should put that code?
So let's think about that. What is that code doing that is still sort of processing a command? And so let's see. So you've got there's a command parser class. And it's interesting because I'm just looking at that one in the GitHub repo. So in the command parser class, when it handles take, it actually is also doing a split to see if there's a target. And so we might want to at least initially put it there. Right. So put the job of your take command into the command parser. And so even though we're going to use it here, eventually that will go somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's funny though, like, Oh yeah, okay. It process in the command parser, process command text. It's split. Yeah, true. I was like, where do I check the parser at the beginning?
Yeah.
Transforming the text input in the command. Yes.
And so eventually, and so I'm not sure
So then,
what these
like, it's
command
useless.
objects are.
Sorry?
Which is useless?
Well, I like. If it's already split, then I'm not sure I need to split it again. But yeah, because I passed the input string.
Yeah. So what's interesting is these commands are enums, and sort of good OO would say that actually you'd want to use the command pattern, which is where the command itself would know how to sort of a direction to go would be eventually having the command parser parse into a command and then simply execute the command. And so all the behavior of the command, so for example, for this take command, the behavior that we extracted out into a method would eventually go into the take command class.
Okay.
We probably don't need to do that now, but that's sort of, one of the things that I look at when I'm refactoring is I want to have sort of a direction that I'm going. Like, what am I, so there's two kinds of refactoring. There's sort of the refactoring of just, let's just move stuff out into methods like we just started doing. But there's another type of refactoring where it's like, okay, now we want to do a higher level restructuring and start making, better OO classes. And so that you want to sort of have a direction of what design pattern am I going to use, or sort of what structure. And so moving the code actually into command objects would be sort of a larger restructuring that I would be that I'd be looking at, so that the code isn't just one big switch statement in another class. You want to start putting that behavior into the place where it goes.
Also,
so,
I use that structure because it was like that.
Yeah.
It makes sense at the beginning because it was very tiny, but as I was adding more smart or complex command and action, I was struggling where to put the code, and like that structure you're talking about would make it more structure or easier to understand, because now the take what takes need to do will be inside itself.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So then from there.
But one step at a time. So what we can do now is continue with what we're going to do is input string split into just a method. And for now we can just keep it here, and we're in static, which is a separate issue. We could move it over to we could either just extract a method into from there. So basically, extract this into a method that, given the input string, gives us the item name.
Should we make it something more generic? Let's say to return, like, in fact, to remove the action. Meaning that, for example, if I say look at the table or look table or something like that, then I could reuse that function.
So what I like to do when I'm refactoring is, when I'm sort of at this level of what I call sort of the tiny clarifications, I want to name things as they're currently used.
Okay.
And what'll happen is because I don't know how else it's going to be used, and maybe I don't know what quite the name for it might be, and since I'm also I tend to sometimes, and this is just my bias, I tend to get hung up on good names, and so it makes it easier to just say, well, what is this thing doing now? And come up with the name for that. And then later on, you could see, oh, I'm doing the same kind of thing for, like you said, other commands. And then you can say, oh, this should actually go in the command parser. And but I think right now, just you want to make it as easy as possible on ourselves to just create another method that does what it says, specifically in this context.
So just retrieve item?
I would say extract because the language of so one of the things that's really important is the language, and it's like so I sort of separate into two languages. There's the internal technical language, and then there's the domain or business or subject language. And so retrieve sounds like more the domain, and in that, it's about the game and about the names and verbs and nouns that are in the game versus this is actually a technical, we're parsing a string, so I would want to use the technical language.
Okay.
So
extract item?
I would say extract, yeah. Or extract item name, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah, okay. Cool. So, and it's just under it. And it's static. It's all static right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's all static, which is, a separate issue. But that's fine.
Okay. Later. That's fine.
It's so easy to say, this is what I call a target-rich environment. There's basically a lot of things that you could do, and it's very easy to get distracted. And usually what I'll do is I'll keep a notepad or a list of like, okay, this is something I need to remember to do. Although I think this would be hard to forget because it's all static.
Yeah,
and
it's in my face.
You wouldn't miss it. Yeah, exactly.
No. Okay, so perfect. There's plenty of opportunity to improve on that project, but that's the point of it. So it's perfect.
Exactly.
We are just starting 2020, so multiple streams to do. So that's perfect. Okay.
Yep. So the next thing that I would look at is the other thing I want to look at is like, how would I test this method? Is there anything that it relies on that I would not be able to control from a test? So what I would look at is, okay, so it's accessing game session, so that's a parameter that comes in, so that's controllable from a test. Room inventory comes from the game session. Current item comes from the room. Key event comes. That's key event is interesting.
Yeah, that's key event. That was because you're like I was trying to like I say implement key event, but key event could be triggered by a lot of action. Right now, only take trigger an event. But, like in fact, a key event could be that you just cover the full map, or I don't know, like maybe you unlock the door or like, but right now it was only take. So it was, and I was not sure how to do it. So that's my first kind of draft of triggering an event or a key event. I'm not sure if key event is the important event. I don't know how to, like, in my mind I was like, that's something, if you're building a summary you need to cover those things, so that's why I name it key event. So if you have another suggestion of name, we can change it.
I don't know about the name. What I would say though is is extension. So the chat message is extension method. Yeah, I don't want to get into extension methods. I think we can handle stuff at a more basic level. But I think if we look at this if statement, these lines 102 through 109, that I'm not quite sure where it goes, but it's too much code to be in this method. So I would just extract it to a method. And maybe call it, handle key event. And we could worry about whether that's a good name or not later. But the goal here is to sort of get to the essence of what is do take.
Yep.
And so now we have this do take method, and it's a bit more clear what it's doing, right? It's basically getting the room inventory. Does the room have it? And if it does, then we remove it from the room and add it to our inventory. And so now it's a bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
And so we could look at so we could go down the road now of writing tests for this method, if we wanted to, or we could continue on with some of the refactoring.
Let's continue on the refactoring, because that's
Okay.
I think I could do a lot of like building the rough of the unit test, and then I'm assuming
Okay.
like at one point we could meet again and you could help me to
Yep.
make smarter or maybe implement more mocking. But right now I have not a lot of tests, so I think restructuring my code will help me to have smarter unit test, and then
Okay.
we could meet again and
Sure.
work on that. Oh, and we have some. Oh man, I cannot pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Like Quim. Oh wow. Hello. So I was saying, is extension method is good than function? I think it will be more understandable than in code. Is extension method good? I'm assuming better than function. So I think it will be more understandable code using extension. But that's what I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you see
that's
the
what I was
chat?
saying. Like yeah, I saw the chat earlier. It's like I would say I don't know C# well enough to know whether an extension method is more appropriate, but for me, for just a sort of a core OO, I wouldn't even want to be thinking about sort of different ways of structuring things until we start pulling stuff out into classes and start pulling, basically getting more of a good design from a sort of an OO standpoint before I start thinking about those kinds of issues.
Okay, so Refac 101 today.
Yeah.
Excellent. I like it.
So,
So
so
now
one of the other things that
Yep, sorry.
yeah, so one of the things that I look at, so if we look at this do take method, one of the things that I look at is right now we're passing in this game session, which, again, for me not knowing the code, but it feels like it's this very big amorphous
Oh yeah, it is.
thing. And so what I look at is like, do I need to pass in the whole game session, or can I pass in something smaller?
Definitely.
So if we look at it, really all it cares about is the current room inventory. Now there is the handle key event, but and so that might cause us to not be able to really do much here. But what I would be looking at is like into the do take method, do I have to pass the whole game session, or can I pass a smaller piece? So if we didn't have the handle key event, we could pass in just the current room inventory. And that would be sufficient, because one of the things you want to look at is you always want to pass in sort of the narrowest, right? The narrowest thing, the narrowest interface, or the narrowest or the smallest object into methods, because it reduces sort of the coupling between parts of the program, which then makes testing easier.
But
Because now
then
you don't have to manufacture. But the handle key event, what does it need? It needs this process trigger thing.
it needs a room manager process trigger, because I put some logic over there, and it needs the key event list.
Right.
But if in the switch, like here, where it was the do take, I could have do take and then handle event and passing different object. But then do take, like if I'm in do take, like I'm getting the object, so I should at least return the object name so I could use it.
Yeah, I'm not so bothered by the fact that do take internally is itself doing this key event thing. What I'd be looking at is sort of for the handle key event, is there a simpler interface? Like, again, sort of it goes back to what is the purpose of this key event thing? right? What do we want it to do? What is it used for? And I'd start thinking about what's the interface for this thing.
Key event is I'm collecting string for future to build a summary to when you get back in the game to be able to tell you, oh, you found a flashlight, you did, like, having some kind of a, when you watch a Netflix TV show or something like that and say, oh, in the previous episode, like, you did that happened. I want to do this. So that's why I'm collecting.
So it's a history of actions. Is that
of key event, something important in the story of the game.
So what I'd want to do here is create an interface or a class. I might start just with a class. Because one of the things that I look at is from a refactoring code smell standpoint is this handle key event is, so it's accessing triggers on the current item, it's doing a process trigger on the room manager, and then it's adding to key events. It's all these disparate things that feels like there's a class that could maybe be in charge of dealing with these kinds of events. So there's sort of three parts here. There's one, is this a key event? There's another, which is process. So I'm not quite sure what process trigger is doing. Is it actually doing something? Let's take a look at that method.
Yeah, process trigger will, because when you take the flashlight, so there's, so it's doing a bunch of stuff, in fact. So yeah, because when you take I cannot talk and do things. Game session, room manager then. So when you take the flashlight, I need to change the description of the room. Because and I remember, like, when we were looking at the living room, the description was, you are in the cozy living room and there's a flashlight on a table. But after you take it, I don't want to see flashlight anymore. So that's why you have a trigger. So it's two things. You have a key event, you find the flashlight, and there's a trigger. You need to change the description. So it's two things.
So that's surprising to me, because I would think that the description of the room would be print the description of the room and then print the contents of the inventory of the room. Is that not what it's doing?
No.
Okay.
So what I did is, when I described the room, when some trigger are triggered, I switch for what I call potential description. I was not sure how to do it, but I describe, because I don't want to tell the people what to do in the room. I want to let freedom. So that's why if I say, oh, you're in the living room, and in the living room you have a flashlight, and then, like, it's easy to say, oh, I want to do something with all those things. But if I just describe as a blob of text, like, now it's up to you to try different things. And when I will add AI, you could say, grab the flashlight, take the light, and I will play with those. So for me, it was important to have a description that describe what you see, and then have the freedom to try to do whatever I want. And of course, the game won't handle everything, but but maybe
I guess
what I understand right now is there's too much happening right now, because in that handle action, because there's the trigger and there's the key event. Maybe it should be
and so the again, sort of, let's talk about the current room description. So what it looks like it's doing is, whenever the inventory changes, because you took the flashlight, for example, you go and explicitly change the description of the room. And I would say that the other way to do it would be to always generate the room description on the fly based on, I mean, this is, sort of the way I think of common adventure games is there are two parts to, when you enter a room is you would see, here's the room description, and then here is the inventory of that room. You've highlighted this code of building that. You build that every single time.
Well, that's when I create the map. Hi, Copper Birdie. Happy New Year, man. So yeah, that's that was at the beginning when, and that's why now it's commented. That was the object when we build the map. We create, we add room by room. Now it's coming from the flat file or your save game.
Sure.
And so, there's a living room, and then there's the initial description. There's the exits. And now I added the inventory.
Right.
And because I wanna obfuscate what's possible to do. I don't want to make it clear. I want clear code, but I want the people to feel free to do what they want. I don't want to give any clue about, because I feel when I was playing old game, they didn't tell me the only text-based adventure game or text-based game I played. And for me, it was super hard because it was in English, and I was not able to read English or write English or anything. So I was playing with a dictionary, French, English, beside me. And the game name was Amnesia. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing. It was just describe what it was, and then you type what you're trying to do, and eventually you got it. Or for me, it was the feeling. So that's why I'm trying to reproduce that, because that's what I liked. And that's why I think when I will inject AI, it will help. Because now you could say grab or flashlight or light or I don't know other synonym of flashlight. Thanks for the following, Gregarious.
But there's nothing you're saying that I think would So again, sort of what I'm thinking is you're basically you have two descriptions that involve a flashlight, right? There's when the flashlight exists, you say, and a flashlight on a table in the middle of the room. And if there's no flashlight, then you basically just don't mention the flashlight. There's an alternate description. But what I would say is you want to dynamically generate that description based on the contents of the room. Change the description of the room based on events. I mean, I think you can do that, but I think you now have sort of two cross-cutting concerns. You've got dealing with the inventory, and then you've got changing the description. And maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to proactively change the description. But what I would, from a design standpoint, I'd be thinking about there is a listener, right? So going to the observer pattern, there's a listener on the inventory, and so there's sort of this the procedural way of thinking about this is sort of how the code is right now. It's modify the inventory and then do this thing over here and then do this thing over here, right? Rather than letting the objects be a little bit more loosely coupled and have the thing about the description listen to the inventory, and if the inventory changes, then it says, I need to update myself based on that change, right? So to me, this is one of the core things about when I look at OO design is instead of sort of poking stuff into objects and changing their state, I want to just tell them things and let them react. Okay. And so it's a much more so. I don't. It might be a bigger change than we probably have time for. But thinking about the description of the room or the room itself is a listener on the inventory. And so then if you go back to the do take method, or actually the handle method, we'd see that then all this is just modifying the inventory of the room. And then there would be a key event handler that would listen for changes to that inventory. Right. So basically, again, we're sort of decoupling these two pieces.
Yeah. Well, in fact,
Did that make sense?
even there, like the key event. Trigger and key event.
Right. So there are two parts to that method from sort of a higher level. One is just storing what happened, and the other is changing the room description based on this event.
Yeah.
And so this sort of goes to a very event-driven way of thinking about it. Is like there's just events and they're broadcast, and it's a different architecture.
Yep.
I agree. But basically, right, you broadcast, hey, the flashlight was taken from this room, and the room can say, oh, okay, I need to update my description. And the inventory can say, "Oh, okay, I need to remove that and put it into
Yeah.
But that's, I think, that's quite a big thing.
Did work with the observer structure before, and it's true. It will make more sense. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Probably because I was looking for a kind of a quick way to. Yeah. It was putting the first draft on.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the great thing about refactoring is you start with stuff, you try and figure out what you want to do, and then you refactor. Like, to me, that's the most important. Like, I'll write just most straightforward, easiest code possible, and then you can then take sit back a bit and say, okay, what can we improve? And that's
exactly
factoring. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep it that way then. And later on, we should switch to a more object-oriented structure where we implement listener and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay. And of course, since we have smaller thing, it will be easier to test.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of this is always driven by how am I going to test this, right? How am I going to test this thing? How am I going to test, and so having, being able to say, okay, I'll create a room and then tell it to handle an event as if somebody took the flashlight, right? Then I'm very confined and constrained to just dealing with the room, and I didn't have to deal with other stuff, right? So by pulling these into the separate objects, it also happens to make it easier to test.
Okay. Okay, so that I can definitely do. Continue to break down things like that. I want to optimize my time with you, so I'm thinking, should we just wrap or abstract the database? Because you mentioned that before, like extracting and removing the code, I understand, and now that I have unit tests, it make more sense, because before it was just moving text around, but now that I have unit tests, having smaller thing makes sense.
Yeah. We can take a look at abstracting out the database.
Yeah. Okay. So there's right now there's nothing, I think, doing that, because when you start the game, if you say you want to load, then I go and I do select game type. Oh yeah, so I think it will be in game session. Is it game session? Load type? Yeah, load game. And if you load, I go, I create my client. Connection string is hard coded because I didn't have settings like I explained to you. Like,
right.
I need to implement that. And I saw some blog post, so I think I know what I need to do. I just want to do it on stream.
Yeah. Yep.
So we could keep the connection string hard coded for now, but everything else, I'm open to better structures.
Yeah.
To
so
suggestions.
so the first thing that I'd be looking at is right. So what I want, I want there to be some method that returns the game session. So right now, this load game session assumes there's what does it do with it? So it gets a game.
It loads the object because we are in
game session.
So
right.
It's kind of the constructor, but indirect.
Yeah. So what I would do is I'd create a new class that is the game loader.
Okay, let's do that. Yep.
And then basically, as a first step, is move that method over to this class.
Okay.
Actually, hold on. Let me. So okay, that now we're gonna have some stuff that's not gonna compile. That's totally fine.
But like, you mean I should do something like inside load session of this, do a game loader dot.
Yeah, exactly.
Oops. And it should return an object, right? It should return a game session.
Yeah. So this is the tricky part because this load game session method. When does that get called? Does that get called during construction time or?
Yes. When you create the game session, you pass the type and the player name. Because remember, the player name is my key for the database.
Sure.
It's the ID. So if the type is load, then I call that function. So in my constructor of game session, I have two ways. I could have done an overload or something. I just did a if-else statement.
And so where's the code that instantiates the game session? Who calls the constructor?
In game. So in the main, I show the introduction, so the ASCII art that I comment right now and ask the name. Player creation is, hey, how I should call you, and then I instantiate the parser and the game connection.
So what I would say actually is, so on line 18 is where you're basically you sort of delegated the decision, I think too deep into to where things are being called. So if we look at back in the program.
In the program, yep.
Yeah, in the program. what is it, line 18. Right, so 18, you're basically instantiating the game session object, except then what it does is it goes and decides, am I loading a game or am I creating a new one? And I think that kind of decision should actually be outside, because also then in line 20 you're seeing, was this a loaded game? So I think what I would do is have, if I do new game session, it's a new game session. It's not loading anything from anywhere. And then I would have out here in program, if it's a loaded game, then I go and call the game loader, and then it can go and instantiate the game session. All right, so you basically have at the top level decided, am I loading a game? If so, I'm not going to instantiate it. I'm going to load it, and it's going to be responsible for instantiating it. Does that make sense?
Yep. So then I should have two, like in game session, I should have two constructor. Or should have
possibly.
So with like just with player name or with
right, so you should have one with player name and one with that basically
or should I have load game and create new game, and then those will be static, so I could just
I mean we could do static methods, but I'd be fine with either a constructor that takes
because I could,
let's see.
I could
so
do...
if it's a new game, then you're just going to take the player name, right?
Yeah. But then how?
Actually, let's go back to the game loader. What is, because I didn't take a close look at what it was doing.
The game loader?
Yeah. Like, how does it put stuff into the game session? Okay, so it just accesses directly.
That was done like in maybe 15 minutes at the end of the stream.
Yeah.
Probably even huffs, after the stream, just like hacking, so it work and I can push and commit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very direct.
You don't need to be defensive about hacks. We do it all the time. That's what we do. No, I was just looking to see how we load it, because so I think what one way to go is to have two constructors for game session. One that takes a player and then basically builds the empty stuff like you have it now in the constructor. And then the other one that basically takes those four parameters: the room manager, inventory, key events, and player. So we can start with that one, and drop it and pull out the loaded game.
So here, room manager, I'm assuming I will need then to put the game type.
So why does it need game? Why does it need the game type?
Because I loaded from there. Why? I don't know. I don't remember.
So it looks like it loads the map, but
yeah, it loads the map.
Wouldn't the game loader already have loaded the map?
No, the game loader, like it should, honestly, because I did it in two separate shots. Before I was loading stuff, but like not the map, and so it should be how do you say that in English? Like embricked, like inside the other one.
Embedded, yeah.
Embedded.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so like I shouldn't.
Yeah, so I would say room manager, if it's a new game, then it just.
Well, in fact, the constructor of room manager should be by default. Like, it should be by default new game. Oh no, I could remove that.
Well, so this is interesting because the game, the room is loading its data from a different place than sort of the game state.
Yep.
Um,
Well, because the point of that, and like you also mentioned it, but you had a fancier way to handle it. For me, is if I'm just hacking through, or if like for me, it was a way to, if someone want to collaborate,
mhm.
I don't want them to install MongoDB if they don't need to.
Right.
So they could run from a flat file.
Right.
So that's why I did it that way. And last stream, I start really using MongoDB for the first time. Before it was all like you saw, like in the code. So I was
Right.
trying to extract that thing. So like we are very early in the game for that. Like everything
Yep.
everything is early. I think I
Yep.
work on that maybe 10 hours. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yep. Yep. Um, so since the room manager is
So yeah, so I should remove
yeah.
that. Maybe I let's
Well,
let's keep
I would
it
say
for
since
now. Just
yeah,
to
I think it's separate from what we're trying to do, and so it's very again, it's sort of very easy to say, oh, let's fix this too, and it's like, well, we're already in the middle of fixing one thing.
yeah.
And I don't like my stack of where we are to get too deep, because then it's easy to get lost. So since that is fine, then we leave that the way it is.
Okay, so new game,
And
that's the constructor. Yep. It receives only the
awesome.
player name. And I could put a comment here just so it's clear for me. So I'll create new game. Just because we are in the middle of something.
Yep.
And here, what you're saying is, I want to receive all those things in parameter? No.
Right. Yeah. So this constructor basically wouldn't need the if statement. So this first constructor wouldn't take the game type. It would take and it wouldn't take the string player name either. Right, so what it's going to take is basically the four things that we're trying to assign, which is the room manager, inventory, key events, and player object. And it wouldn't call load game session. What we're going to do is at the program top level, it's going to decide, oh, if I need to load the game, I'm going to call the game loader directly from there. So inside the constructor, it doesn't need to do that.
Okay. So I don't need the game type. Yes. No, room manager will be...
Right.
So I don't need that. I need a room manager then.
But we can be explicit about it because we don't... So we don't... Actually, that's a good question. Can you go back to game loader and what is it doing for room manager? Does it do anything?
No, just load it.
So where did that come from? Oh, so I'm confused.
Oh, I passed it because when you are a load game, I load the map, and I think when I load the map...
Yeah, what does that do?
I had the room in the room collections.
Ah, okay. So this method would probably... So there's save map and load map here. That's interesting.
Well, like they could be legacy. I'm not sure I'm using save map any. Yeah, I think I do. Because I think I used save map when I was poking around with when I start using the database, like I said, I didn't have any identification, and I was looking for a collection to save a lot of stuff, and I started playing around with the collection I have, and it was rooms.
Right. So then, back in the game loader,
we could load the game right here.
I mean, we could load the room. We should be loading the room from within this class.
So that's like that's the like right now we are doing a 2-step. So we could move that to receive all.
Well, so let's. Yeah, I mean, I would say let's do one thing at a time, make sure it works. Right now, since we don't have tests, I'd be a bit uncomfortable about making too many changes. So let's leave it as is in terms of the room manager loading stuff, and let's just get the constructor to be correct. So yeah, so the game session, and I think one of the viewers had a comment about named constructors, and that might be something we do later on.
So then I need an
but so you'd want you don't need to pass the player name, because that would be done by load session. Sorry about the noise here.
That's fine. It's exotic for me. So that's a list of string. Oh yeah, I didn't create any type for a key event. My bad.
Yeah, that's the way it starts. Starts as a list. I do that all the time. I'll start as a list or some basic collection, and then as I see, oh, this needs more functionality, then I start putting it into its own class.
So now I could do like everything should be done in the other level, so inventory, and then
yeah, so this is just pure assignment.
this. Right. So now in programs, sorry. Yeah. Okay. And if it's okay, and now if it's the load version, I should do.
Isn't it the other way around? If it's the loaded game, then we use the game loader. Otherwise, we
Oh, yeah.
instantiate the new one.
You're right. at least someone is listening. Okay. So now I should do game loader dot. Oh, it's public, but it's a string though. But I would need to change that. Oh, because I didn't instantiate. So should I make it like kind of a tool and just?
Yes. Yeah, it should return an instance of a game session, not a string.
But I mean, should I make it static so I could call it?
Yeah, I think for now static is totally fine. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter. You could make it not static, and you could make a constructor, but I'm not going to be, as they say, I'm not going to be pedantic about it.
Oh, yeah,
my bias is definite is usually static is an absolute last resort.
It's evil.
And mainly that's because it's very hard to test things that are static.
Okay.
But
so here I need to replace this by session equal new game session, and I need to pass the player name. Right? No.
Right. Yes.
And then like this, and I return that thing.
Right.
So now here I should be able to do load session, pass the player name.
Oh, that's interesting because those attributes, the inventory, the room manager, and so on, I guess those getters and setters are public. So we actually didn't need that other constructor because we're not using it. All right, so if we go back to game session.
Yeah, they are all public.
Yeah, so basically that load save game constructor, line 22 and following, like I wouldn't personally, I for now it might be okay, but I generally don't make that kind of stuff public. So if we want to do it sort of the better OO way in game loader, we want to do things a bit differently.
Okay. So what should we do?
So instead of instantiating the game session before that if statement, we want to instantiate it in the if statement at the right. So we want to basically take those the things on the right side of the equal sign parameters into the constructor.
Yeah, you're right. So I will do this again. And it was in room manager. No, everything is set, right? So I shouldn't. So it was the first one was room manager, I think. Then inventory. Then key events. And player. And strangely, the ID is not loaded anywhere.
Yeah, what is the ID for?
The ID is, I think, I created a new GUID, I think, because I didn't like the fact to use the username as a key. But for now, I didn't have anything else, so I decided, you know what, I will put a GUID or something like that. So if we look in the code,
that's fine.
I look in data, oh, that's not a save game. That was just a file. So yeah, so I think I gave it's a GUID. It's supposed to be a GUID.
That's fine. I was just curious what it was doing.
I think it's maybe done. Or I wanted to use that. I don't know. I like for me it was an exit to not use the name as the identity for the game session.
Okay.
It's not clean, but yeah.
So the only question here then is what do we return if game is null? And you could just return null. I mean, you've already got some error handling that you might need to add in.
Yeah.
Right, because that's why it's complaining on line 29 is because if game is I mean you'll have some error handling at some point to add.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
All right.
Program, game session summary.
So what I would say now, what about what is game session summary?
Yeah, because it was complaining because it was not instantiate.
Oh, you weren't
so
actually
now game session is loaded.
Yep.
So now it should work. Cool.
So what I would say we'd like to do now is, does the thing still work? Does it compile?
No kidding.
Right? We don't have tests, so we'll have to test it manually. Does it still work? Because assuming we didn't do anything wrong, it should still work the same way.
It should.
But
let's
should
see.
and does.
Yeah, of course. I think I changed the file, so it should work. Let's try it. So let's start a new game. And it failed again. I tried to load the room. Couldn't find the part of the path. SRC, Project Drover, bin. Yeah. And that's why I don't like the file, because depending on the tool, the OS you're running, the path is never the same.
And that was the stuff that I think you were talking about. Like, you can either, like, I know in Java there are ways to solve that. So
I'm sure
there's a way to solve that.
Use like variables.
Yeah.
Like working directory or something like that. I forgot.
Right. Yeah.
Let's put the hard-coded the full path. I will just put this like that. because I know even on my my laptop is not the same path. So okay, that part is working. So if I do north, excellent. If I do east, if I do take, see, like now the flashlight is part of the description. And now if I do, oh, let's try that. I changed that code. No, let's keep it safe for now. Flash. Because I changed the code earlier. The unit test made me realize my code was broken. Apparently, unit tests really help you to have better code.
Yeah.
It's not a myth, it's a fact.
It's not a myth, it's a...
And then story. So player inventory contain flashlight, living room, excellent. Look like it's working. And if I do summary, you found a flashlight. You have so it's working. And if I do exit, it doesn't know. Do you mean quit? Yep. Cool. So we didn't break anything.
All right.
Well, we broke a bunch of stuff, but like it's still running.
Well, we changed stuff. We didn't break
okay.
anything.
We didn't broke stuff. We changed stuff. You're right. So we have about 15-20 minutes left. Because I'm really hungry. So after that, I will lose my passion, patience.
Well, I mean, a couple of options. One is we could stop here. It's a good stopping point. We could just stop, and you could go get food earlier. Or we could, look for some other low-hanging fruits.
Well, maybe we can try to squeeze something else just for. So we had a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Sorry, go.
I was gonna say I saw for the where was it in the command parser? Something you just flipped through. Maybe it was in command parser.
Command parser is bunch of it's the big it's just parsing text, returning a command. Game session is doing a bunch of stuff, but that's maybe too big.
So one thing you can do here, and this is pretty common for command parsing. I do this a lot. Like when I was writing one of the Twitch bots, and you have commands. What you can do, right? You've got what I look at if the immediate thing that stands out here is you've got a lot of duplicate comparison against ignoring case.
Yep.
And so the first thing I would do is get rid of all that and basically normalize the text coming in. So that way you're either always comparing uppercase or always comparing lowercase. Either way is fine. But what's interesting is there's also, so you've got the command as a string, but then you also have command as an enum. Right, and so that's basically what this command parser is doing, is it's translating the text into an enum.
Yep.
Now I know in Java there's a really easy way to do that. You basically just iterate through all the enums and looking for the matching text.
Yeah, but in C#, maybe they change it, but an enum is always a number. Like the value will be like maybe it's too small, but command handler is equal to 0. They might have changed that in the last version of C#. I'd
be surprised if there wasn't a way to do that though, because enums in Java have been around for a while, and I know C# copied some of that stuff from Java. So, but even so, like what I would do is let's say enum doesn't have that. What I would do is I'd build a map. Right, and so what I build is a map that associates the string to the enum, and then all this if-then stuff goes away, and it just becomes a map lookup.
I don't follow a map.
So I know in Java it's a hash map or a map or a dictionary. I'm not sure what it is in C#. I'm not sure either.
I think I understand what you mean, because there's automapper. Let's say you are in what's the data? There's libraries that you can use it where they have automapper and stuff like that.
No. This is a core part of the collection stuff. I guess in okay, so in C# it's called a dictionary, right? So a dictionary basically associates a key and a value.
Okay, so you will do, instead of having an enum, you would convert that.
What you're going to do is you're going to use the dictionary. The key would be the string text, and the value would be the enum.
But then I will have duplicate entry because I want look and I want L.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So then...
I mean, there are other ways to do it. The other way to do it is loop through all is put more code into the enum. And again, this is where I don't know enough about C#. I know in Java, enums are basically just classes with syntactic sugar to make them easier to work with.
I think Copper Birdie is checking like if it's possible right now, because he say 1 sec. So maybe he's looking for that.
I'm doing a search myself. Enum types.
But
so in C# you can't add the code into an enum, but you can create an extension method.
You're seeing what?
So I'm looking at the docs for the enumeration type, and you can't add code into the enum, but what you can do is add an extension method. Because what we want is we want to be able to have a way of asking the commands which one matches this string. And so one way is we could use the dictionary and just have multiple entries for different strings to map to the same command enum, and that's totally fine.
Yeah,
that's probably the most straightforward way to go. Then you basically get rid of those 25 if statements, and you just have to preload the dictionary with the right data. A more sophisticated way to go would create a more complex command object that's not just an enum, that and this sort of goes to the direction of making the command. Oh, there it goes. Get values. I thought there was a way to do that.
Well, I think it's new, because I remember trying to do that, and it was always a hack. Like, you could put things and but that looked more legit. And then get values a type of T using the dynamic thing.
Yeah. So my feeling is the way I would do it is I'd probably go just convert it to use a map and not change the enum and not bother with that. Sorry, you create a dictionary. But then the next step I would be going away from enum and making the commands actually full-fledged classes, and putting the code, for example, like the take command, putting that code inside of a command object called take command. Right, and creating then a hierarchy of command objects. So then the command parser just translates text into a command object, and then you just ask the command object execute. And so that would be very much the literal command design pattern, and I think that would fit very well. But I would do it probably as a two-step process.
Yeah. So let's just place some placeholder. And that will be my homework, plus the unit test, plus.
Yeah, and actually, what I would actually do before I modified any code is I would write a test for the command parser that and maybe you already started writing that, I forget. Is where, given this command text, it returns the appropriate command.
Well, I did it for like very stupidly, where like like if you return West or uppercase W or lowercase w, it return command West.
Right. Yeah. So basically, once you flesh that out, then you can replace it with a dictionary lookup, and the test should still pass.
Okay, so the command parser. So I need then the command class here instead should be a dictionary.
No, the way I would start out is I'd leave the command as enums. I'd leave that alone. The next thing I would do is in the command parser, I would create a constructor that loads the dictionary with the association of the text that you want with the command enum.
Okay. So just like okay, so a new dictionary, and then, but then.
So right now, so it wouldn't be to replace the enum, not yet. So you'd create a dictionary that associates string to the enum.
Oh yeah, associate. Okay. So let's do it. Whoa. Well, because I'm not in the.
You're not in a.
Oh yeah, I'm in the class, but I'm not in the function.
You should be in a constructor, yeah. And Gregarious asks, how often do we guys do this pair programming? This is our first time.
It is our first time. I did a few pair programming with like I think you're the third one. I did the first one. Someone who showed me how to use the XUnit thing. After that, cool. I helped someone to structure to make their deployment automatic. Alvin or Calvin, I forgot. So someone was trying to deploy in Azure, and I help him to structure his auto deployment. And like today, you're the third one. So like early stage on collab, and I love those ones. It's way more fun than being alone.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, not alone. Yeah. You always have the chat, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I want to get some of my apps to go through the Azure DevOps continuous integration stuff, because that stuff looked interesting.
I can help you if you
want. Yeah.
Right now, I use these days. I use more. I will put that in comment and finish later. But right now, I use more the GitHub deployment, the GitHub action. I did use a lot of like in some project I even put public my GitHub, my DevOps. I think Not a Dog Workshop is one of those where I have the the Azure pipeline, and if you open that, it's public, and you see my pipelines.
Oh, cool.
I have another project called Reading Notes. It's not finished, but it's building right now a container and running some tests, and I did it using Azure DevOps also. And it's publishing to Docker Hub from Azure DevOps. I need to finish that part, in fact, eventually. It was just, I felt like I was the only one really enjoying that project, so that's why I put it on the side. But I need it. That's why I start with that project. I really need that thing. It will be useful for me like every day. So but you know, less sexy. Yeah, it's the thing I use to publish. Every Monday I publish my reading notes.
Oh, okay.
So when I found an article that is interesting online, I send it to my Kindle. And then I read the article and had one line, just my 2 cents about the article. Mostly just, writing something helped me to make a connection and it helps me to remember.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, so in the Kindle, all those notes are kept in a flat file. So I have a Kindle parser, clipping parser, because that's what they call it. So that I create in the Docker container, the parser.
Oh,
so cool. I just drop the file in a folder. It triggers something automatic, and in Azure spawn the container instance, parse everything, and generate blog posts.
Neat.
And so I need, and then I want to edit it, because of course on the Kindle sometimes I go very short, I do typos and stuff. So before publishing, I want some kind of interface to change stuff, maybe add an image or whatever. And so that's the cool tool. It's called Reading Notes. I have been using that for a while, and it's the 3rd version.
That's a great idea.
First version was in Ruby, because I wanted to learn Ruby.
Right.
The second one was using Logic App and stuff, but now I need to change those things. Logic App is a serverless. I think it's glue for Amazon. I'm assuming if you're Java, you're maybe more Amazon, or no?
I'm actually not even on Amazon. I'm using Heroku.
Heroku?
Because it's a one button push to deploy. So.
Well, now with the function, you could do Java also. Azure Functions support Java.
Yeah. I haven't looked at those yet.
And a lot of stuff in Azure also support Java. But so anyway, it's just it's kind of a Logic App is kind of a if this then that, but on steroid.
Oh,
so
cool.
you could just do a bunch of stuff and connect and call different services or classes or whatever you want. You just pipe things together. So I use that to make that. But I feel like I did a great progress. I have a lot of work, but now I know what I need to do to make progress.
Yeah.
So I'll probably work a few streams on shaping that, and we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
Thank you a lot.
My pleasure. This was fun.
For me, it was a very, very, very instructive, very great. I don't know. I'm searching for my word. The only thing that popped in my mind is lucrative, and it's definitely not that one. It was very worth it. Yeah. It's very interesting for me. And it's good. It was not that far, but
we made some good progress. Yeah. All right.
Cool. So thank you a lot.
My pleasure.
When do you stream?
I usually stream from noon my time till 3 or 4 o'clock. So be starting to stream 2 hours from now.
So I forgot your handle. It's written but it's super
there, JitterTed.
So I should be able to do shout out.
Beneficial, yes. Thanks, Copperbeard.
Yeah, well, plug your stream a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you a lot, and let's see who's available. We'll raid.
All right.
So, Code Rush is there, so let's jump on that one.
All right.
Do you know Code Rush?
Yep.
I'm following a lot what he's doing these days. This guy is a magician. So we should be able to do in 5 seconds. Well, have a good day, everyone, and again, thank you.
Bye.